Hey everybody, welcome to Junk Bucket Garage. Today, we're going to work on this piece of junk. Enjoy. All right guys, before we get started, let's give this thing a quick reach around. This is a 73 Ford Courier, and it's pretty straight. You can tell that by the way it's all smashed in right here. That's not that bad though. Look at this. This is the important part. I don't have a ding or dent on it. And the bed is also very straight. The cab's got that one pushed in spot, but I think we can unpush it in from the inside, so that won't be too bad. This little ding right here, we don't worry about that one. That one happened after I brought it home and had it, saved from the barn it was in, and my dad backed into it. So we won't talk about that. I put new tires on it. These are 14-inch wheels. That's just so it can move around and roll, because the old ones just weren't doing the thing. When we were picking this truck up, I also found a brand new set of 15-inch Pontiac rally wheels. So that was pretty cool. Look, that one's even still got the Pontiac Minnesota Devils. I think that's what that means. If it don't, I'm sure you'll let me know. But yeah, it's pretty straight. It's opens. See that? Everything's here. It looks pretty clean on the inside, except for, I don't know if you could tell or not, but the headliner has left the building, and the seat might need some duct tape right there. Maybe there. I don't know. We'll see. This has got the 4 on the floor high performance version. Don't even have a hole cut in the dash for a badass late model stereo system, which you have to have a badass stereo system if you're going to be rolling around in this monster. Sure. It's got had a little damage right here that somebody did some body work on. I would, fix that a little bit, but my body works worse than that. So, shoot. The bumper might need to be straightened. I was looking at the grill a little bit ago when it ain't sitting right on this side, but it's not the grill. The grill actually looks salvageable. I think it's whatever happened over here that's causing that issue. And that looks good to me. So, I mean, all in all, it's a solid little truck. It really doesn't have any rust anywhere. It rolls really easy. And, I never touched the brake pedal, so God only knows what that's going to do. But, yeah. It's got a hydraulic clutch, so that's not going to work. And the brakes probably aren't going to work. Let's walk through this program real quick. That door, I mean, that really opens easy. Look at this. It don't even feel like anything's happening. It don't feel like nothing's happening. But it's still, I thought at first it wasn't working. That's literally how smooth that is. I did spray a bunch of stuff in it and all over this. That probably helps. But this is pretty neat. Look at this lever right here. You just pull on that. Smooth as silk. Honestly, the door shutting and the levers opening and the switches and the lever buttons and all that kind of stuff, I don't know why, but on this truck, all of that stuff is better than any old car I've ever worked on. Let's flip that up. And look at that. That is right there. Yep. Well, that wasn't supposed to happen. So I guess we'll do this part with the hood down. I'm going to tell you a story real quick about this truck. I was picking up another truck for a friend, and I happened to just gander across the street in this old barn and saw a headlight. I believe it was that one right there under a pile of trash, and said, hey, that's an old Ford pickup, like a courier or something. And there happened to be a gentleman out there cleaning stuff and throwing stuff away. And I asked him about it, and he said, yeah, there's a couple of old trucks in this barn, literally falling down this barn. Like, no joke. I wished I would have got some video or pictures of it, but I didn't. It was literally falling down. It was scary. It was sketchy. So I talked to the guy that owned the property, and he used to own a tow yard, and he had a wrecker. And all the cars that he ended up with that he thought were cool or collectible way back in the day, he brought home. And he, no joke, had like he was closing in on lucky number 100. This guy had a bunch of cool pre-1980 cars. Well, he got sick, and he spent 2 months in the hospital, according to him. And when he got home, 95% of his cars were gone. The county apparently got a complaint. They told him he had to clean up his property. He was sick in the hospital, so nothing he could do about it. And they just came out and grabbed all of his cars. And I'm talking Chargers, Challengers, Fairlanes, Mustangs, Dusters, Darts, Super Bs. This guy had them all. Pontiacs, Oldsmobiles, AMCs. He had all of these cars that were pre-1975, 76 that he had collected his whole life, and almost all of them were gone. And I just hate hearing that. I mean, they were all sitting out in the field. They weren't all show cars. None of them were running. But they were his. He collected them his whole life. That don't sit right with me. They shouldn't have taken his cars. Anyway, now he's doing a fire sale because whatever's left, they're still coming to get. He's got paperwork on everything. I worked out a deal with him and bought a couple cars. Just what was left. None. Now, hey, let me tell you something. The weird part is the people that came and took all the cars off of his property went out of their way to get all of the really cool muscle cars first. Like, they would pass up some old Dodge pickups and Ford pickups and take the Super Bee and the Charger and the Challenger. No, those cars didn't go to a scrapyard. Anyway, I did manage to get this from him for next to nothing. He was just excited that, those people weren't getting it. You've all heard the story about how the car ran when it was parked. It always ran when it was parked. It ran when it was parked. You know what I mean? It was running, and then I parked it, and now it's 30 years later. Well, this truck was literally in that barn that was falling down for 31 years, according to this old man's memory. And he had a good memory. He was a solid old dude. This one, when it was parked 31 years ago, was not running. It was broke way back then. And it's going to be a challenge, probably. We're going to see if we can get it running. Why'd you close your hood on me? I still need to get in there, guy. If I'm going to get you fixed. Oh, that's why, huh? That's not staying up. That's probably going to have to just come off, to be honest with you. The forward folding hood is a good design. I'm used to leaning over this part right here, this area, to work on stuff. You can't, I can't do that with this. Oh, what's this? Ah, this don't look good. I thought taking that hood off was going to be just a big pain in the butt, but it actually really wasn't. So here we go under the hood. First of all, I grabbed some of this stuff out. That's probably not a good sign. That is the thermostat housing, the water neck. This is a vacuum something or another. Bolts, clamps. All of this stuff is for the air intake, I believe. So that don't look well. But then I came in here and I was like, oh, look, the valve cover bolts are off. Well, that's not the end of the world. I mean, the carburetor's still on there. And then I saw this. Yep. What does that lead you to believe, people? Because if I were a betting man, I would bet that they were trying to attempt to begin, to start, to understand, to change a head gasket. That's the only reason why they'd be unbolting that. Cool. Well, you know what? We're going to try to start it anyway. First thing is, how does this work? That is some sludge, man. That's some sludgy oil. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Yeah, that's sludgy stuff. What does it smell like? Yep. It smells like that. I mean, there's no signs so far of a great catastrophic that it's broke. I don't know why they were unbolting this. The intake is still bolted on. I mean, they took this thermostat housing out. I'm guessing it was burning water and or maybe it was overheating. I don't know. Look at how cute this radiator is. So cute. Oh. This thing had a clutch fan in 1973. That's ahead of its time. That's because this engine was not made in the great United States of America. No, sirree. This is a Japanese one from Tokyo, Rokiko, Rotodo, or whatever that is. It's a dry type air filter. It says it right there. Yeah, this was made by, what was it made by? Mitsubishi, I think. Probably wrong. I'll have to research that and then pretend like I sound smart on the internet. Yeah, I don't know. Mitsubishi, I think. It is dirty under here. I think step one, we're going to have to clean all this. Should probably put that back on first, though. Carburetor's still on here, and if I move these levers and fulcrums, it works. So, I mean, that's got a 0.5% chance that it'll work. This motor, fellers and fellettes and anybody else out there that's watching, is froze solid. And I think that it probably got something, I don't know, down the exhaust hole, because this was all still connected, but this was disconnected. And it was in a barn. But if it did have a blowed head gasket, it probably had water in the cylinder when they porked it. Or parked it, or whatever they call that when you pork something. It is like 105 million degrees in California right now. So the donkey is doing its duty right now, carrying ice around so that I can stay hydrated on this hot day. Yeah, remember, hydration is very important. Always keep some cold snacks. What do I do first? Well, first, I'm going to eat something. So, yeah, I'll see you after that. Well, it looks a lot better with all that stuff cleaned off of it. I was going to vacuum everything, but then I switched to the just blow it all off technique. Everything's really nice and clean under here. I did see one thing, however, that's slightly worrying. That is the timing cover with a hole busted out of it. And you can see the timing chain right there. And the timing chain's not loose or flopping around or any of that stuff, as far as I can tell from just taking the valve cover off. And I don't know how that would get broke unless they were trying to pry up on the head, or maybe they were prying on something when they were trying to take that thermostat housing off. That's a little worrying. Well, here's my plan. This motor's going to run or it's not. And in order to figure that out, the first thing I got to do is get it to turn. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull this radiator right out of the way, right off the bat, so that I don't have to fight with trying to get my hands in there to grab a hold of that crank bolt. And then if this motor doesn't run, that's not the end for this truck. I might have another idea. But first, let's see if we can just keep it the way it was built. And that means, what's love got to do with it? Loud noises. Now, I'm probably not going to do it, but you really should bag and tag every bolt you take off. And the reason why I'm not going to do it is because I don't want to. But don't do like I do. Be smart. No matter how good a mechanic you are, don't expect to take something apart with 500 bolts. Let it sit for 2 or 3 years and then know where every bolt goes. Now that radiator hose has been sitting on there dry for, I don't know, 30 years or what have you. I'm going to run a pick around it and see if it'll even come off. What do you think my chances are? I got the heavy hose pick because this one's probably going to be tough. Picking this hose. I'm picking this hose. Zooming cars that have long since dead and gone. I'm resurrecting vehicles that should probably be left alone. Wait a minute, there's water in there. Oh, that is sludgy, but oh no, it's still kind of green, guys. Don't smell too much like oil. Huh. It still had some green, and you get hot fluids in it. That thing's really got nuts on the backside. Well, strike one, car. Strike one. Might as well move the grill anyways, just so we don't Put our big fat body up against it, break something. Anybody else here listen to Randy Travis when they were young? Me too. It's back when you actually had to be able to sing to write a song. You know, it's not all auto-tune. They thought of everything, didn't they? Except how to stop the timing cover from getting a big hole in it. I think the chances of this thing actually turning over are getting lower and lower. I'm going to be honest with you. That doesn't mean I'm going to quit on it, though. What if this was the zombie apocalypse and this was the only car we had and our lives depended on me getting it running? Should probably find someone else to survive the apocalypse with if that was the case. You already messed up. Yeah. Okay. Well, turn it like that. Mm-hmm. Like that. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it still had. Oh, I mean, it's a little corroded, but it still had water in it, so it couldn't have been leaking out of the bottom. That's the cutest little fan I've ever seen. All right, let's zip zap those spark plugs out of there. I sprayed some gunk in it, and it's been sitting. See what happens. No, that's the big one. That's what she said. Classic. Get out of there. Well, sure. Just do that, why don't you? The stuff I sprayed in there's been sitting for, I don't know, a couple months. Let's see what happens. I got to find a socket that'll fit on that bolt in the front because it is a big one. I'm sure I got one somewhere. Okay. So I had to go find a socket that would fit on this. I got a set of big sockets from Harbor Freight. This one's 1 3/8 inches and it fits on there. Let's see if we can get it to turn now that that radiator's out of the way. And the last time I tried to turn this thing, it would not budge. But I sprayed some deep creep penetrating fluid in all the cylinder holes, and it's been sitting for a couple of months. So just that hole over here in the timing cover doesn't give me a lot of hope. Let's see what happens. Oh, that's turning. That is turning. All right, she's free. I'm gonna spray some more lube in those cylinders, and we're just gonna make sure that we can get a full revolution circle, and then maybe we'll spray a little more lube in it after that, hook a battery up to it, and see if the starter works. What kind of lube should I spray in there? I got some WD-40 that's sitting right here, and it's got a long little tube on it, so that seems pretty handy. You know what I might do? Since it turned, let's pop this valve cover off and make sure that the cam's turning also, huh? Because that wouldn't be ideal if it wasn't. I might even go ahead and spray some lube on that cam, huh? Sure. Why not? Can't hurt nothing. All right. I feel pretty good about that. Uh-oh. Oh, yep, cam's turning. Valves are moving. if we can get this thing spinning over with the starter, I think we'll go ahead and change the oil. Just see what it looks like. And then probably just see if we could do the finger test and see if each one of those holes has compression. If it has compression, it should run, right? Well, owie. Success. Now, what did I say I was going to do? Oh, yeah. Which one of these is the positive? Oh, I see some bones. Somebody must have been doing voodoo with this thing. I don't know what kind of animal that was, but it is not no more. Yeah, there is a lot of water in this engine and the oil. Normally, if the oil was decent, I would just start it with this oil that's already in it, but this oil's not decent. In fact, that is just pure water. Oh, that's a lot of water. Uh-oh. That's not good. Is there any oil in it? Well, it's full of really clean water. The good thing is oil floats, so if we could start getting oil coming out of it like that. Oh, that's chunky. We can go ahead and put that plug back in. And now most of the water should be out. And it's just oil now. I mean, it's not the best oil. But it'll be enough to just crank on this motor a little bit. And we don't have to waste $50 putting new oil in it just in case. This thing's got a rod sitting in the bottom of the oil pan. You know what I'm saying? Got a battery. Right, yeah. That up. What's power right there? Any smoke coming out of anything? I got my probe hooked up. I'm getting 12.5 volts. So that battery's charged apparently. And then I dig down in there and I find a black wire with a yellow stripe and then follow it up. It comes up over here. So I'm going to try putting some power to that. And nothing happens. So that's not right. Yellow, there it is right there. So if we power that one, nothing. Yeah, we're losing power. I gotta clean these batteries. I'm just gonna have to break down and do this stupid thing the right way because we're losing connection here on these. Okay, I changed these battery ends. Another thing I did was I got my heavier dutier starter switch here because I don't know if this thing's even letting enough juice go through to trigger that, whatever that thing is that starts the motor. I had to hook a little jumper wire onto there so I could get a good clean connection onto that plug. Make sure everything's out of the way of the fan. And let's try it. Something happened. hear the starter spinning, but it's not engaging. And it does not sound good. Hope the flywheel ain't stripped out. Let's give it a little bit of a love tap. Well, now it's making a different noise. Oh, that's a different noise. Shoot. Well, unfortunately, I think that starter is going to just have to come out. That stinks. How hard is it to get to? Are we even going to be able to find a starter for this thing? Oh! Oh, look at that! What? It does not sound good, that starter. But it is, in fact. Well, now what did I do? There it is. Let's see if it'll work. Is that battery dead, maybe? Very possible. But turning is happening with the starter. I see valves opening and closing. Let's get a jumper on that starter and see what happens. Well, it's turning over. I know why that little chunk is missing out of the timing chain cover. Oh, and that's because that timing chain's flopping around like nobody's business. Unfortunately, the starter just didn't have what it took. You know, it put in its time, and it has since left the building. So we're going to take a starter off now. If you're wondering why I'm using a bumper jack, it's because that's the easiest one to get under the car. And some people will say you shouldn't use those because they're death traps. You know, the car can move and the jack can, you know, they just basically say they're, you know, because of this kind of stuff, but they're not safe. Well, sure, a bumper jack can kill you, but also, you know, so can bears, tigers, snails, non-fat mochas. Be smart is what I'm saying. Stay away from squirrels and you'll be okay. Don't be scared. Oh man, one more will do it. This is the one that gets you. Well, I was hoping not to crawl under this thing, but since I have to, I might as well set it up so that I can just keep doing it because, you know, probably going to have to keep doing it. Oil your bumper jacks, people. Keep these things working smooth, and they're just a handy tool to have around. Just like that. And then the nice thing about bumper jacks is you can store them anywhere, just like this. Well, let's see what we found inside that starter. First of all, there's typical rust and stuff. None of this looked too bad. It's just dirty. This was really dirty. I cleaned that with some 1500 grit paper. And the biggest problem I found was all of these brushes were stuck. None of them were moving at all. And one of them, which one? This one right here, that spring was broke off. There's part of it there. I was able to just bend it and then reclock it on here and get just a little bit of pressure pushing in on that. Hopefully it'll be enough, but it definitely wasn't making full contact all the way around. So yeah, it's got these big screws on the sides here where you could take these out, these magnets out. Basically, a lot of these older starters were completely rebuildable. You know, you didn't have to change the whole starter. You could just change the solenoid and then change the brushes. Really, that was about all there was to it. So I got all these cleaned up, that spring fixed. I'm just going to clean up these ends that it spins on and grease them a little bit so that everything spins free. Put it all back together, and then before we put it in the car, we'll try it and see how it works. Starter's back together. Now we're going to test the starter. And if you've never done this before, it's pretty simple. You're probably going to need a set of jumper cables. Just some cheapo, skinny ones will work. You need to ground to the body of the starter, from the battery to the body of the starter. And then you need the power to go to the main power lug on the starter, which is the big one that the big power wire bolts to. And then you're going to need some kind of wire, jumper wire or switched power, or touch it with a wire, whatever. Power to connect to the solenoid trigger wire. And I've just got it set up where my button is connected to it. And what you're looking for is the starter shouldn't make any loud noise, just like a buzzing, humming noise. This Bendix should shoot out, so these teeth will engage the flywheel, and it should spin pretty fast, and it should jump when you trigger it. It'll have quite a bit of torque. So you want to hold down on it, and let's see. Just like that. And if you hold it down for a second, you should hear that starter just moving fast. That's it. Starter seems to be working really good now. Let's get it back in there. Ugh, it's a pain in the butt. And see if it spins this motor over fast like it's supposed to. Okay, new rebuilt starter is in. Let's give it a try. Still a little slow. The battery's probably weak. That's a lot better. Now let's go ahead and see if we can get a spark to happen. If a spark happens on the spark plug, then stuff in here should be working okay. This is a point system, so it's going to be 6 volts. And right here is the regulator. It'll regulate it down to 6 volts. So if we put 12 volts on this side, 6 volts should come out and go to the coil. We're going to go ahead and just hook that right to there. I hear a fuel pump running or something. And I don't see a spark. Oh, yep. Yeah, I saw a spark. Maybe a bad ground. But I did see a spark there. I'll have to make sure. When I put 12 volt power to this, I'm I'm hearing a fuel pump or something run. Maybe I'll just need to disconnect whatever wire is on there. And it's probably key power, and this apparently has an electric fuel pump. There's no fuel pump anywhere here on the motor. Sounds like it's back there somewhere. Maybe it came that way from the factory. I don't know. Never worked on one of these before. But I did see a spark. So I'm going to disconnect that wire so whatever is happening back there doesn't run anymore. And make sure we got spark again. And then I think we could spray a little stuff in the carburetor and see if this thing fires off. Hope so. I think we're ready. Let's see if I could fill one of these vent tubes with my mustard bottle. Oh yeah, look at that going in there. Good stuff. Hey, look at the float even work. Yeah, it did overfill a little bit. Let me just put a little in there. This is, of course, mixed two-stroke oil. I'll hook this up. That should be powering our points. Find this thing here. Oh, thought I heard a pop. I think I heard a little bit of a pop. Okay, I got the overhead view going on. Now hopefully I can... Well, I lost everything already. There it is. Now hopefully I can work this throttle a little bit. I'm definitely hearing a little puff. Well, I didn't film some of this, but let me talk you through what we got going on so far. I burned up the starter that I tried to rebuild. This motor was just cranking over really slow, and I figured that starter pretty much just had it. So I talked to the parts store. They had one that they could get. I got it. I put it in this car, and it was still cranking over really slow. And I figured it was just because this engine was, you know, tight. Well, it cranked for about 10 seconds and then smoke poured out of my new starter. That was the end of that. Now here's where I messed up. My father-in-law comes over and goes, well, did you check these front accessories here, like the smog pump and the alternator, to make sure they were spinning? No, I didn't do that. So I put the bar on the front and I turned the motor, and sure enough, that smog pump was froze solid. It was just dragging the belt around that rusty pulley. So I unhooked that, and the motor turned over really easy. And just to be safe, we took this thing out on the road. Believe it or not, the brakes work. Surprised me. And we just put it in second gear and took it for a ride for a block or two and brought it back. And now this motor turns over super easy. Super easy. Every cylinder has compression. All I'm going to do now is put the new starter in. And now here's the thing. This is the same as the starter that came out of this truck, except the starter that came out of this truck, these ears were threaded. So the bolt bolted right into it. Well, they could only get one of those, and I burned it up. So they said, well, there is an option for one that doesn't have threaded ears. And I said, well, order that one. We'll see what happens. It's the same exact starter, but the ears aren't threaded. So I just got a longer bolt. Plenty of room. We'll go all the way through it, put a nut on the back side, That should work just fine. It centers itself kind of right around the cone here, and it's actually a pretty tight fit. You got to kind of pry this thing out, so it shouldn't be a problem with the starter moving around or any of that stuff, as long as it's tight flush up against the engine block. The other thing I did was I bolted on that exhaust manifold because I was just standing around here bored and maybe a little, you know, what do they call that, depressed, because I burned up a brand new starter because I didn't look at the belts and see if any of the pulleys were spinning. Man, dummy. That's the way you learn, though, so next time I'll know to look at those. So I bolted on this exhaust manifold so that hopefully it won't just shoot flames right in my face area. And then I set all the valve lash, and then I put the valve cover back on because that was just spraying oil everywhere. And you know, there is still a hole in the side of the timing cover that's going to spray oil everywhere, but at least it's limited. I got spark plugs. I'm going to go ahead and shoot new ones of those in there, and then we're going to put this starter in, and we're going to check for spark again just to make sure, because you never know. This battery's been charging all day, all night, and we're going to give it another crack. When this thing was spinning over really, really slow, I actually did get it to pop 1 or 2 times. Didn't film it, of course, but that's okay. I'm not a professional. Well, let's get to work. Get this starter in. And then what did I say I was going to do? I don't remember now. Drink a beer? I'm pretty sure that's what I said, right? Okay, now the starter's in place. Before I go any farther, I just want to spin this engine over and make sure that it spins like it's supposed to. I'm going to move this camera. Here I go again on my own. No one here to help me do stuff. It's been charging for a while, so I'll take those off so that I got to put them back on in a minute. And there goes everything. So I'm not going to hook the ignition up yet. There's actually one spark plug out of the hole, but this will still give us an idea of how this motor is going to crank. Remember before it was very slow. What we're hoping for this time is wee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee instead of yeah. Know what I mean? Now let's just see how she cranks. That's a lot better. And you hear that gallop? Normally that little would tell you that something's wrong with this engine. But that's just there because one of the spark plugs is out. But that's spinning over much better. Get these whacked in there. We're going to check for sparkles again. And we're going to move on with our lives. Start this thing finally. Spark plugs. On a car that has points, you obviously always want to look up what the spark plug gap is and speckleize it, get it right. But I'm going to say between like 25, 30, 32 thousandths is probably about the highest you want to go. Oh, my beer, no. And it's completely empty. Son of a biscuit. It smells like somebody spilt beer on this engine. It's weird. Actually, my last beer. Just trying not to cry right now, okay? You know? Just trying to keep it together. I'm going to check this thing for spark by trying to start it. So let's put power to our coil. We'll gasoline. See if it even pops. I think that qualifies as popping. Fill that bowl up again. Let's give her a shot. Not getting any gas out of the carburetor bowl. That's it. She ran. Actually sounded pretty good. I don't think the carburetor's sucking gas out of the bowl. The carburetor probably needs to come apart and be rebuilt or cleaned. But I'm happy with that. Oh man, dummy. That's a runner, guys. I think we might be onto something. It actually sounded pretty good. I know why they parked it, and I know why that hole is in the timing cover. That timing chain is flopping around so bad, it's smacking the side of that timing cover. So I think we'll try to get a rebuild kit for the carburetor, get a timing chain set for it, see if we can find a timing cover. If we can't, that's aluminum. I could probably just get that welded up and then grind it back down. But that's a runner. I still got to get that clutch to work. I want it to get running long enough to start it, but that timing chain's going to have to be fixed first.